Hi, and welcome to Still Evolving, where we explore the truth behind lasting performance and resilience. Rather than rely on perfection or superhuman ability, our conversation will highlight how real strength emerges through simple, intentional habits grounded in self-compassion, adaptability, and the ability to grow through life's inevitable setbacks. Today's guest is Virola, a communications strategist who helps leaders and brands tell clearer, more human stories. He works with companies across AI, cybersecurity, and enterprise technology, guiding them through the changing landscape of media and generative search. His career centers on elevating leadership voices, building trust, and creating communication systems that drive lasting visibility. Aaron's professional perspective is shaped by his own personal journey through loss and major life transitions. He's a thoughtful advocate for honest communication, resilience, and reinvention, and he often writes and speaks about identity and the evolving relationship between humans and technology. Welcome, Virola. Aaron, welcome to Still Evolving. Very grateful to have you on and look forward to our conversation. To kick us off, could you please share a little bit of your journey, perhaps where you came from, some significant steps along the way, motivations along the way, and what you're working
Sure.
on now?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and happy to share a little bit about my journey in terms of where I'm coming from and sort of some of the things I've been dealing with recently. So I'm in the PR and communications business. I've been doing this for 20 plus years, which makes me feel older than it should. But so it's a little bit of street cred when you get to say that to clients. And, I think just kind of being in this business, you spend a lot of time thinking about the personal brand that you want to create. We spend a lot of time in PR worrying about our clients and worrying about their messaging. And that is also symptomatic of the way that we think of ourselves as professionals as we kind of navigate through our careers. And so I have had many amazing opportunities at some big agencies where as you kind of move through the business, you get to reinvent yourself a little bit. And again, you spend time kind of crafting that to specific skills. And I think one of the things that I've come to realize in the past year or so is that life has a very unique way of forcing you to reinvent yourself, forcing you to take a harder look at some of the things that you want to show up as or show up for as a leader, but also just as a human being. And so outside of just the skills based sort of foundation that I present myself as, or I bring to the table, there is a deep level of compassion and empathy that I've always had as a leader, but I think more so because of some losses I've experienced in my life. Coming up on 7 months now, or it's in 7 months. I lost my wife to a very short but hard battle with breast cancer. We have been together for about 20 years and married for 13. We hit our 13-year anniversary just after she passed. It was a moment in time that one of the pillars of your life, like when you structure your life around somebody and that unity, that person becomes a huge monolith in the way that you kind of conduct yourself and the purpose, obviously, and I've got 2 children as well, but that losing her rocked me to my core, and things that I would prioritize in relation to work or the way I was showing up at work needed to be repositioned, reoriented. And what I mean by that is, we spend a lot of time in these walls, within the workplace, worrying about things that are out of our control, worrying about things that at times can take you away from being present, either if that's with family, if that's with loved ones, if that's with, yourself. And, it's a hard reset moment for me to recognize that a lot of this stuff is, it matters, but it doesn't really matter. Time is short. Control what you can control, and remember that we're all human beings. We all have things that we are going through. We are processing. It's all growth. They're things that we're taking and putting on our back. And some of us are better at shouldering those things without other people seeing or understanding or knowing. And some are not, but we need to be empathetic people to understand that dynamic and how those things in our personal lives are impacting the way that we show up with our colleagues and with our clients or within our work environments. And you're sort of dealing with the loss of Jessica, which is my wife's name, brought that front and center for me because it was such a significant, it had such a significant impact on the way that I kind of fashioned myself as a leader. I appreciate people's grind. I appreciate the grit and the hustle that folks inherently bring, that ambition, that I think we all have that and we all want that. We all want to be valued for doing good within the office space. But at what cost is the question that I often ask now. And, one of the philosophies, it was taught to me a couple of years ago, it didn't really hit home until recently, was the concept of work-life balance is a flawed concept.
Yes. Say it louder for those in the back, please.
Yeah. Yeah, and I believe this. Life is so big, and work is meant to be a part of life. They are not meant to be on equal playing fields. And that has rung true for me in so many ways because my life is a mosaic of all of these pieces, these things that kind of make up the beauty of it. Work is one of those smaller tiles that is important, but there are other pieces that take up more space, that need to take up more space. And I think oftentimes we fall into the trap of prioritizing the bigger pieces for the smaller things. And so again, I think for me, just kind of going through what I'm going through, because it is grief and, the loss is something that I will carry with me forever. I'm forever changed from that experience. But that also means then that the impact that I want to have and the legacy of, again, reorienting that idea of work and life and focusing on what's important is also something I have to carry with me. And that's definitely a way that I lead my teams. I'm always reminding folks that work with me and work for me, take a breath. It's not that serious. Like, focus on the things that matter.
Perspective helps.
A
Yeah.
100%,
Aaron, besides perspective, what I hear in that is just such a powerful dose of self-compassion. And also what you were describing as a leader, compassion within your leadership, your interactions with others. Certainly, first, of that you're sharing and the impact of the loss, and the grief that you're still going through, and how that has rendered a pause in how you consider kind of your mosaic
Yeah.
and what you want that to be. Do you have a sense of maybe as that mosaic takes shape and what this new path is, what thriving would look like for you within that? When you think, I push back on the whole work-life balance piece as well. For a slightly different reason, I had a General Stanley McChrystal. He has talked about this as well, just in that at the end of the day, we're making all these choices of how we live our life, where we show up. Sometimes that's at work. Sometimes that's at a work-related event. Sometimes that's with the family on the beach for a vacation or at home,
Right.
just enjoying dinner with our family. And all of those choices, it's a very fluid, kind of dynamic decision-making model. And inherent in that, and as you describe your mosaic, there's going to be moments where you wish you could do both. I
Yeah.
wish I could be at this work event, and then I wish I could be at home, or at the band concert or
Right.
whatever's
Right.
going on. So you have to make these decisions. I'm just wondering, that's kind of like the normal evolutional process, and you layer on top loss
Yeah.
and the grief process. I'm curious if you can talk about what does thriving mean to you now and where you're going. What will that look like? How will you make those decisions? And in terms of your leadership at work, what does that entail?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and it's something I think about often. I have non-negotiables now. I think when you're partnered with somebody, and that's a safety net, that's a reliable system that you can say, especially when like I mentioned, I've got 2 kids. Hey, can you pick up one of them because I'll be late, or I don't have that option anymore? And I'll give you a great example because it's happening tomorrow. I have a company party, holiday party, that I would love to be at. I'm a new member of the agency. I'm a new member of my team, and it is absolutely important for me to be there. But I have parent-teacher conferences for my 2 kids. I can't reschedule those things. My children's academic growth and development is more important to me than how I show up at the office or at a holiday event. And that is a non-negotiable. I cannot trade one of those things off for the next. While the ambition and that professional drive is still there and that fire is always burning, my real legacy is within my children. And that is a trade-off I'm not willing to make. And now I might, for anyone who's listening for my agency, I hope that is something that folks can understand, that there's also a little bit of bravery there. I mean, the easy way out is to be like, oh yeah, no, I would choose work, choose the holiday party because it's fun and it's a place to mix it up and socialize, which are all the things I need. But again, I have now non-negotiables when it comes to things related to my children. They will always get my full attention. They will always get 100% of that. I also think the other piece that is important to me to explain is that it oftentimes, and this is just personally speaking, when we're in the work environment, we create a version of ourselves that is the work or the professional facade. And sometimes those personalities can differ. Like the family Aaron is that person, and then work Aaron is that person. I have stripped that down, and my ability to talk about my children, which oftentimes was a guarded place that I didn't really kind of discuss, or the things that were happening in my family dynamic, were things I didn't typically discuss because I'm old school. It's like that does not belong in the workplace. It's something I lead with. It's something I'm always talking about because I want people to get a fuller understanding that and I work with people who are starting or getting married, who are just starting their families. It is important for them to understand that it is okay for you to take agency of your personal life in that way and to make those decisions, and does not have to show up as somebody else, because I think that there's great leadership, there's great liberty that comes in carrying those things with you and leading with those things and bringing that side of yourself to the table, because you are a human being first. You're not a machine. You're not this sort of concrete persona that's just working all the time. Like, there's things that are going to impact the way that you show up professionally, and those things are personal. They can be
Yes.
personal.
Use the word bravery. I guess when I heard that, I'm reminded of the courage that comes. And oftentimes in high performance, I'm talking with executive leaders, or in the past athletes, or even SEALs, where we hear the word confidence so much. And oftentimes, because confidence is so temperamental, it can wax and wane. You talk to
Yeah.
any Major League Baseball player, they take one swing, they're going to hit it out of the park. They miss the next swing, it's gone,
Right.
right?
Right.
But I talk about the power of courage to show up. And when I hear you talk about bravery, to be able to show up and take up down a bit, you can still show up professionally and yet be real. Be
Yes.
real in that you are a father. Be real. You talked about losing your wife, or be real about some of your team members, maybe newly married, their new spouse, right? But it takes courage to
Yeah.
do that, especially if you are not necessarily in a climate or a culture where that has been the norm. I heard you
Right.
say I'm a bit more old school. So what helped you find the courage to do that?
Yeah. I mean, I think it is in many ways. I mean, I think it's amplified since the loss of Jessica, but it was always something that I felt the tug of war between those things. I think you emulate the leaders that have had the biggest impact on you in your career. And I have been very fortunate to have some of the most empathetic agency leaders in my career. Some people that to this day are sounding boards for me and people I model myself after. And it was because they showed that sort of dimension of their lives and giving people grace to talk about things that were personal, lean in so heavily on like, oh, you're a worker first and then the person second. So in many ways, it's me paying that forward. But I think, again, since kind of experiencing what I've experienced within the past 7 months, I don't have time. I know this is going to sound a little morbid, but my mortality faces me every day, and time is short. So with that kind of always top of mind for me, I don't have time to give you something that is not real, to not give you the room to step into your own, your own place and tell that you need to do something because it's related to whatever, you're not feeling well, or you've got some other things. Like, that's more important. Health, the bigger tiles I was talking about, those are more important. This will never stop. The environment will never go away. We're all in it. That never changes. Where you do it will change, right? But whether you decide it or not, it can have a profound impact on those bigger tiles for you. And so long as you keep those intact and you prioritize those things, this becomes easier to manage. And you can't do that unless you take ownership of that. And so again, I think for me, it's top of mind for me because I can't waste any time. I can't allow something that is within my control to take control over things that are important to me.
Certainly, I hear that empowered, like, sense of agency, right? That time, it is the most meaningful, valuable aspect in our lives.
Somebody once explained to me, it's actually a therapist of mine. She said, when people are dying, they never go and say, I wish I worked more. They say, I wish I was traveling more. Or I wish I spent more time with my kids. I wish it's all the life. It's the things that were additive to their humanity. And I'm not saying the work is not additive of our humanity, but the perspective that, again, it goes back to the work-life balance thing. It's the life part that we wish we had more time to experience.
So you talk about the power that comes in the connection, whether it was a therapist or other leaders you've worked for, mentors you've had. Curious what a takeaway has been for you in this journey, whether it's from those people in your lives that you've learned from, perhaps trial and error yourself as you've persevered through loss, continuing to evolve through this loss. Is there a daily habit, routine, tool, some immediate actionable strategy that you would like to share with our audience that you might help ground you or help you to evolve through?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot. And this came even before, I'm sure as you can imagine, the fight with cancer is an all-encompassing fight. And I spent a lot of time in that moment of my life developing some of those practices. First thing is to ground myself. You said grounding. I do physically ground myself in the morning. And in that moment, I'm setting intentions for the things that I want to happen or the goodness or the gratitude that I want to bring. I want to bring forward, but also the things that I accept in that moment. First thing is waking up in the morning. Thank you for giving me another day to change the world, to change the things around me as best as I can. The next thing that comes from there is a reminder, and I've said it a couple of times as we've been having the conversation, is to control what I can control. So there is a freedom of understanding that there are clients, people, situations that are outside of my control. What I can control is how I respond to those things. And so that is a critical part of the way that I start my day and think about what I'm intending to do, the impact that I'm intending to make. And, throughout the day, those are consistent reminders. Those are things that are playing in my mind. The last thing I do before I go to sleep and close my eyes is to thank the universe for the opportunity to have made an impact, to have experienced things that I will inherently integrate into my personality, into my leadership style, all of those things. And I do a mental sort of replay of the things that impacted me or had an impact on me, and think about the lesson that's been learned. Because if I'm blessed again to wake up the next day, how am I going to implement some of those things? And so that to me, and just to summarize all of that, is about being present. That is the biggest thing that I could probably impart. And that is not an easy thing to do.
No, it's not. And to hear there's a process in that, and then there's also components within it. So you'll hear people talk about gratitude, whether it's waking up in the morning and being grateful for the breath, whether it's at night being grateful for the experiences. You'll hear people talk about actions of reflection, like what are those lessons learned? How does that inform my next day? Inherent in that, though, is the process. So it's not just the what, but how, right? Something that I heard you talk about where there's a grounding focus that from the beginning to the end, and then also the critical elements of refocus, right? Because life happens, and we're human. We're not able to dial into that which we know matters most every minute of the day. We
Right.
have reactions. We get distracted with the things that maybe are less prioritized, really, when we take a step back to consider it, or we get distracted with our own reactions or things that are out of our control. But when we catch ourselves, when we have the awareness that we perhaps are distracted by those things, the process that you talk about of refocusing on those fundamentals that you have found that matters. Thank you. How powerful to hear it's not just the what, but the how. I really appreciate you sharing back on the whole day and how it has helped you continue to evolve and get through even life's greatest loss. So thank you. I'm very humbled and I'm just incredibly grateful for you sharing today. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.